Everyone knows what Order 66 did to Maul. He was on Mandalore. He was winning. He had built something, a web of influence, that stretched from the criminal underworld to the beating heart of the Mandalorian warrior culture. He had armies. He had the Darksaber. He had a throne that even the most powerful men in the galaxy would have needed to think carefully about challenging. And then Order 66 arrived like a shockwave across the Force, and the clones turned, and Ahsoka Tano let him go, and the siege collapsed in hours, and Mandalore burned, and Maul ran. That is the version most people carry. Maul as collateral damage. Maul as the villain who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong moment in galactic history. The man who climbed out of a garbage pit on Lotho Minor and rebuilt himself into something terrifying, only to have the galaxy detonate around him at the precise moment he had finally genuinely become dangerous. That version is almost certainly incomplete. Because if you examine what Order 66 actually destroyed, not in the abstract, not as a thematic chapter in the larger story of the Republic's fall, but specifically, strategically, politically, you start to notice something unsettling. The event that appeared to ruin Maul's position also systematically neutralized the only forces in the galaxy that could have stopped him from eventually getting everything he actually wanted. The Jedi are gone. The Republic is gone. The criminal syndicates are reorganizing under pressure from the new empire. The traditional power brokers who would have held Maul accountable, who would have recognized him, tracked him, and eventually cornered him, all of them are either dead, dispersed, or suddenly consumed with their own survival. Maul escaped Order 66 with his life. That is the part most people focus on. What they don't focus on is what he escaped into. Start with the timing. Not the emotional timing, the strategic timing. Maul had just unified a significant portion of Mandalorian power under his control. Not through diplomacy, not through negotiation, but through direct, personal combat. He had killed Pre Vizsla and claimed the Darksaber in front of witnesses, which in Mandalorian culture is not a political maneuver, it is an unambiguous transfer of legitimate authority. Death Watch, the most militarily capable faction on Mandalore, had just shifted from being his enemies to being his subjects. He controlled Sundari. He controlled the prison system. He had Almec installed as prime minister as a functional puppet who would execute Maul's directives while maintaining the appearance of legitimate Mandalorian governance. This was not a gang. This was the architecture of a state. And then Order 66 detonated it. And this is the first crack, did it? The siege of Mandalore ends with the planet occupied by Imperial forces. Maul is gone. His shadow collective has been shattered. Almec is eventually killed. Everything Maul built is dismantled or absorbed. From a surface-level reading, this looks like destruction. Maul loses the physical apparatus of his power. But here is the detail that most analyses treat as incidental and probably should not. Maul survives, and his enemies don't. The Jedi were the one organization in the galaxy with both the motivation and the institutional capacity to pursue Maul indefinitely. Not the Republic Senate, which was politically paralyzed. Not the Mandalorian government in exile, which was fragmented and militarily outmatched. The Jedi. They were the ones who had tracked him, fought him, imprisoned him, and when he escaped from Stygian Prime, it was Jedi resources that were reallocated to recapturing him. After Order 66, that pursuit ends immediately, permanently, which means that whatever infrastructure of vengeance and accountability existed for Maul, the people most motivated to see him destroyed, the institution most capable of actually accomplishing it, was erased in a single night. That's only the first crack. The second crack is about Sidious. Sidious traveled personally to Mandalore to deal with Maul, not through proxies, not through agents. Sidious himself came, defeated Maul in combat, and then, and this is where the narrative starts to press, uncomfortably chose not to kill him. The official explanation offered in canon is that Maul was to be kept alive. For what purpose, the story implies, is as a tool, a lure. Sidious explicitly tells Maul that his suffering is not over, that he has plans for him. And then Mother Talzin arrives. Dooku kills Talzin, and the architecture of Maul's original power base, the Night Sisters, the ancient Force tradition he was raised in, the supernatural protection and connection he had through his mother, is permanently destroyed. Here is what the official story wants you to take from this. Sidious was in control. Sidious broke Maul. Sidious removed everything Maul might have used to eventually become dangerous again. But look at what Sidious actually accomplished. He took a man who had an army, killed his mother, destroyed his support network, and let him go. Maul spent years afterward in functional exile, and during those years, the years of the Empire's founding and consolidation, Maul was not on Coruscant. He was not near the seats of Imperial power. He was not anywhere that Palpatine needed to watch closely. If Sidious's goal was to remove Maul as a threat, there was a faster method available. It was a method Sidious used on dozens of Sith apprentices across decades. He could simply have killed him on Mandalore. He didn't. And that's only possible if removing Maul as a threat was not the primary goal. The third crack is about what Maul does after Order 66, not immediately after, but in the years that follow. He rebuilds. Not the Shadow Collective. That apparatus was too exposed, too large, too dependent on Mandalorian political legitimacy that no longer existed. What he rebuilds is smaller, quieter, Crimson Dawn. A criminal syndicate operating in the shadows of the early Empire, positioned beneath the notice of Imperial intelligence, run through proxies, generating the kind of wealth and network that doesn't look like power until suddenly it does. The implication is difficult to ignore. Maul didn't rebuild despite Order 66. He rebuilt because of what Order 66 cleared away. Every competitor for the criminal underworld who had been operating under the protection of the Old Republic's institutional blindness was now navigating a new set of rules under an empire that was simultaneously more authoritarian and, in the early years, more chaotic. The syndicates that had calcified under the Republic had to reorganize. The Jedi who had occasionally disrupted criminal operations were gone. The Senate committees that had created legal obstacles were irrelevant. And Maul, who had been building criminal infrastructure for years, who understood the underworld in ways that legitimate Republic institutions never did, was positioned to exploit exactly this vacuum. If that's not accident, it looks uncomfortably like preparation. Here is where the narrative forces a choice. You can accept the surface reading. Maul was a victim of Order 66, a powerful figure destroyed by a historical event that had nothing to do with him, who happened to survive through luck and resilience and eventually rebuilt something smaller from the wreckage. Or you can follow the logic of what Maul actually wanted, not what he said he wanted, not the revenge narrative he wore publicly, but the structural outcome that his decade of maneuvering pointed toward. Maul's stated goal was always framed as vengeance against Obi-Wan Kenobi. This is the story the audience is given, and it is not false. His obsession with Kenobi is genuine and eventually consumes him. But obsession and strategic motivation are not the same thing. Maul is not stupid. He was trained by the most dangerous strategist in the history of the galaxy. He absorbed Sidious's understanding of power, not the Force side of it, which Sidious never fully shared, but the political side, the patience, the willingness to sacrifice proximate goals for ultimate ones. And Maul's ultimate goal, stripped of the revenge framing, was survival in a galaxy shaped by Sidious. Not defeating Sidious, not escaping his influence, surviving inside the structure Sidious built, positioning himself where Sidious would find him more useful alive than dead. building the kind of power that Sidious would choose to tolerate rather than eliminate. This is not speculation, it is the direct implication of how Maul behaved across years of Canon and Legends material. He did not move against Sidious after Order 66. He did not attempt to expose him. He did not try to organize resistance or capitalize on the early instability of the Empire. He built a criminal syndicate, stayed in the shadows, and waited. This is the behavior of someone who has correctly identified the rules of the game and is playing inside them. And those rules, post-Order 66, are actually more favorable to Maul than the rules that existed before. Under the Republic, Maul was a wanted fugitive with a known profile, hunted by an organization, the Jedi Order, that had the galaxy's most sophisticated Force-sensitive tracking capability, access to Senate resources, and the moral authority to operate above normal law enforcement limitations. The Jedi were the one thing in the galaxy specifically designed to find people like Maul. Under the Empire, the Jedi don't exist. Vader hunts the survivors. Vader is not interested in Maul, not initially, not institutionally. Maul is a criminal figure, which means he falls under Imperial intelligence and the local garrison structure, neither of which has the Force detection capability that made the Jedi genuinely dangerous to him. The hidden motive, then, is not Maul wanted Order 66 to happen. The hidden motive is something darker. Maul had spent enough time inside Sidious's orbit to understand that Sidious was going to do something catastrophic, something that would destroy the existing order, and Maul had quietly, carefully built a position that would allow him to survive whatever came next. The Shadow Collective on Mandalore was never meant to be permanent. It was leverage. It was a demonstration of capability. And when it was destroyed, Maul walked away from it with the one asset that couldn't be taken, the knowledge of how to build it. And the most likely explanation for why Sidious let him live on Mandalore, why Sidious, who was meticulous about eliminating threats, chose to strip Maul of his support structure and release him rather than kill him, is that Sidious wanted exactly this outcome. A Maul loose in the galaxy, structurally disconnected from any power base that could threaten the Empire, humiliated enough to be cautious, capable enough to be occasionally useful, and permanently aware of what happened to people who directly challenged Palpatine's Sidious. A contained Maul is more valuable than a dead Maul, because a dead Maul creates no fear. A living Maul, wandering the outer margins of the Empire, occasionally resurfaces as a reminder of what disobedience produces. The implication here is that Maul's survival was not a failure of Sidious's plan. It was the plan. If this reading is even partially accurate, it reframes Maul's entire arc in a way that the saga's surface narrative resists. Because the tragedy of Maul and the saga does frame him as tragic, is usually understood as the tragedy of wasted potential. He was extraordinary. He was the most physically dangerous Sith-adjacent figure of his era. He was intelligent, patient, capable of long-term strategy, and he spent his life in service of a plan that was never his, being used and discarded by forces larger than him, and eventually dying on Tatooine in a fight that wasn't even about him. That is a real tragedy. But it may be the wrong tragedy. The right tragedy might be this. Maul understood the game perfectly, played it better than almost anyone who wasn't Sidious himself, survived everything the galaxy threw at him, including a bisection and a decade of madness and multiple military defeats, and still lost. Not because he made a strategic error, not because he was outmaneuvered in any conventional sense. He lost because the game was designed so that playing it perfectly still ends in Sidious's favor. Order 66 didn't destroy Maul's victory. It revealed that Maul's victory was always framed within a structure that Sidious controlled. Crimson Dawn was powerful, genuinely frightening, powerful in the years of its operation. Maul had the kind of influence that moved the black market of an empire. He had information networks, safe houses, the loyalty of people who didn't know his name but followed his directives. He had more functional power in the decade after Order 66 than he had in any year before it. And none of it got him any closer to the things that actually mattered to him. Kenobi was on a desert planet, inaccessible not because of security but because Maul wasn't looking in the right place. His Night Sister heritage was gone. His connection to the Force tradition he was born into was severed. His mother was dead. His brother was dead. His original identity, Darth Maul, Sith apprentice, chosen weapon of the most powerful Force user alive, had been revoked years earlier, when Sidious took on a new apprentice and Maul became simply a problem to manage. What Order 66 gave Maul was operational freedom. What it took was meaning. This is the consequence that the official story consistently underplays. Maul, after Order 66, is more powerful in the material sense and more completely adrift in every other sense. He has wealth. He has an organization. He has the ability to influence galactic events, and he doesn't know what to do with any of it except orbit the hole where Kenobi is supposed to be. The Shadow Collective was a vehicle for revenge. Crimson Dawn was a vehicle for survival. Neither of them was a vehicle for what Maul actually needed, which was some coherent answer to the question of what he was for. Sidious knew this. This is not speculation. Sidious explicitly structured Maul's training to prevent exactly this kind of self-definition. Maul was raised to be a weapon, which means Maul was raised to derive meaning from his purpose, and his purpose was assigned by someone else. When Sidious revoked that purpose, he didn't just take away Maul's power. He took away Maul's framework for understanding what power was for. Order 66 handed Maul more operational freedom than he had ever had. It also handed him an identity vacuum that he spent the rest of his life trying to fill with the wrong materials. Revenge against a man who had moved on, control of markets that he didn't actually care about. The Darksaber, reclaimed and lost and reclaimed, representing a heritage he was never fully part of. And if that's what happened, if Sidious's plans for Maul were always this specific, this patient, this designed to neutralize rather than destroy, then the question of what Maul's survival actually cost him is darker than anything the saga openly states. Because Maul on Tatooine, in his final moments, seems to understand it. He asks Kenobi about the boy he is protecting. He recognizes that the boy is the answer to Sidious, and in recognizing it, he seems to recognize what he himself never was. He was never the answer. He was always the question that Sidious used to keep everyone else distracted. Maul's victory was Order 66 inches this sense. He survived it when he had no right to. He built real power in its aftermath. He lived longer than almost anyone who had directly served Sidious, and then outlived their usefulness. And that survival long, operational, materially successful, was the mechanism through which Sidious kept him permanently manageable, kept him chasing Kenobi instead of looking harder at the shape of what held him. The implication is hard to ignore. The most complete victory Maul ever achieved was the one that made him most completely Sidious's. Not through chains, not through fear, though fear was present. Through the architecture of what Maul wanted, because what Maul wanted was never fully his own. It was always partly Sidious's design. And Order 66, by clearing away the institutions that might have forced Maul to confront something larger than himself, locked him inside that design permanently. He felt the victory. He didn't survive it. There's a version of this story where Maul breaks free, where the freedom Order 66 handed him becomes the raw material for something genuinely his. He had the intelligence for it, he had the resources, he had years in which the galaxy was too chaotic for anyone to watch him closely. But that version didn't happen. And the reason it didn't happen may not have been weakness or bad luck or the wrong enemy at the wrong time. It may have been that Sidious built the cage too early, and Maul never noticed, because the cage looked like winning. Which raises a question worth sitting with. If the most dangerous man in the galaxy could be kept permanently contained by being given exactly enough freedom to feel powerful, what does that say about everyone else who survived Order 66, feeling like they had escaped? If you want more Star Wars truths that are rarely examined, you know where to find them. And one question before you go. If Maul had never come back from Lotho Minor, if he had died in madness instead of being restored, do you think the galaxy ends any differently? Or did Sidious always have a replacement waiting? Leave your answer below. Subscribe if you want to keep asking questions. The official story